Hey, what's up? Welcome to Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandergriff, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day, just like you, I am trying to be better. I found it funny however many years ago it was when this started to be a trendy thing, and now it carries on, when all of a sudden, every day of the year had some sort of quirky highlight. Cupcake day, cookie day, ice cream day. Apparently, I really want dessert right now, but you know what I'm talking about. There's just a bunch of weird random days. Well, this year, there's one that you're probably not familiar with, and it happens to fall on May 10th. And it's a day where we focus on something called CDLS. Now, this is something that has been discussed in this podcast before with my friend Greg Peters. He has a daughter, Remy, who has CDLS. And today, he joins me on the podcast to talk about this further. Now, I will tell you this. Oftentimes when I have someone on the podcast to talk about their situation with their child with special needs, we focus on the challenges because I want you to know that you're not alone in the struggles. But today, we're going to twist things up a little bit, and we're going to focus more so on the joy that comes with this circumstance. I want to break in real quick and let you know how much I appreciate you listening to the podcast. My prayer is that I can be a help and a blessing to you on your fatherhood journey. So if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. And if at any point you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email at fatheringourfuture@gmail.com. And if you want other good content, you can go to the website, check out the blog, and other free resources. Thank you again for listening. Be blessed. Do you remember when you became a dad and all of a sudden those New Balances just hit differently? There's something about fatherhood that impacts your wardrobe, and I'm happy to share that I can help you with that now. Fathering Our Future now has merch. We have sweatshirts and hats and other pieces of clothing that you will enjoy sporting as a father. Just go to fatheringourfuture.com, select merch, or click the link in the description of this episode and get you something that you will enjoy and be proud to wear as a dad. Dad, I want you to know I care about you and I am on your side. So I have a free gift for you. I've put together a 7-day devotional, extracted from my devotional, Following Our Father, to help you realign your identity as a dad, to be the dad that God has called you to be and that your children need you to be. Simply click the link in the description below and get your free 7-day devotional. Well, Greg, it's so good to have you back on the podcast. Thanks for being with me.
Anthony, it's a delight to be here again. Thank you.
For sure. I am looking forward to this conversation. Our last conversation was informative. It was also very good. And it reached a lot of people. You and I, the conversation that we had, which I throw myself in there because I have to sit here, but you have one of my most listened to episodes, which
Wow,
it kind of caught me off guard because,
Same.
we're talking about CDLS and it's not a super common condition, but it exists. It's something that you have experienced in your family. I found out that there's actually a day for CDLS that happens once a year. This year, 2025, it's May the 10th.
Okay,
So
it's coming up.
it's coming up. So this episode, by the time people are listening to it, should be about the second week in May when this is coming out.
That's perfect.
Just for that. So anyway, I'm not going to pretend like I know all that much about CDLS even after our conversation. My knowledge is, dismal compared to yours. But people can go back and listen to that to get your story back then and more information on it. But for now, for everyone just tuning in, if they don't want to go back, can you briefly just tell us what is CDLS?
Yeah, of course. So CDLS is an acronym. It's Cornelia de Lange Syndrome. And this was, I believe, a French gentleman who founded or diagnosed the initial disease. The occurrence is about 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 30,000 children. So my daughter Remy, who has CDLS, is our 1 in 10,000 baby. We did have twins, and lost one before birth, just before, and she was also a CDLS baby. So we had a rare CDLS twin pregnancy.
Wow.
And from then, it's been a unique journey the whole way. You mentioned just briefly about getting more views. There's a vibrant CDLS community out there, and there's a hunger for information as, we're still learning about what this means. And there's such a broad spectrum too. Similar to autism, there's some that are fully functioning CDLS members of our community and society.
Wow.
Whereas there's some who are very severe, right? And they have medical challenges that require full-time support. And so you get a broad range, much like Down syndrome or like autism.
Yeah. So specifically with Remy, how has CDLS manifested itself with her? Where does she fall on the spectrum?
Yeah, she falls on the more severe end of the spectrum. Certainly there are others who've had more challenges. She is blessed to have a mother who was a critical care nurse, and I think God knew before we had Remy what was in store and prepared her for that very specific role. Remy, to be a little more specific, she does have the characteristic features of a CDLS individual. She has very long, beautiful eyelashes. They're always something that, any woman who walks by remarks on those. They are natural. You could see them in the ultrasound that they were so pronounced. She does have hand abnormalities, so she doesn't have all of her fingers on her hands, and limb abnormalities as well. And so she's limited, in what she can pick up. We also don't know, and this is something I think that we didn't talk about in the last podcast, but we have a close family who has a nano-rare syndrome, who maybe have been on the podcast before, but they're looking into why the mind and the body sometimes aren't connected. And throughout the medical and the science community right now, there's a lot of research being done aggressively on, are there a lot of nonverbal kids who maybe have a normal mind or even an advanced mind who we don't think are anything more than a 1-year-old mentally. And so, even for kids like Remy, there's an assumption that may not need to be made. And my wife and I are even learning this as we go, like there may be more there than we realize.
Yeah.
And I can tell some stories about that if we have time as we go along.
Well, can you talk maybe about what that looks like on a functional level? So maybe this is an opportunity to do that. But talk about maybe what is she able to do? What is she not able to do? And maybe even some of the projections. I know oftentimes you're always carrying her around. I've never seen her walk. So is it projected that at any point in her life she'll be able to do that by herself? I don't know if she is able to communicate or speak. Is she ever going to be able to do that? What's that look like?
Yeah, Remy's 4 years old now. She weighs 18 and a half pounds, and she's 4 inches taller than my 1-year-old boy. So she's a tiny thing, and she can stand assisted with a gait trainer, they call it. It's basically a medical walker where they strap you in.
Okay.
And then a therapist or a caregiver or a respite provider will help Remy to initiate steps. And the whole goal is to kind of push it along slowly until she initiates steps and to teach her, like, this is what walking feels like.
Sure.
Again, back to that mind-body connection that's so natural to almost everybody, but to some in society it's not.
Right.
And so, a step that comes about when a child is 9 months old or a year old, for Remy, this is a very long process. And then sitting up is the same way. We've spent countless hours supporting her legs and trying to somehow connect that mind to the body because she has the strength. It's just the fine motor skills and the connective. I'm no scientist or medical person, but there's a disconnect somewhere where even though she has the ability to do it, her brain isn't making that connection, like, this is my posture and this is how I need to stay erect over an extended period of time.
Sure.
So it just takes brute force iterations over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And that teaches a tremendous amount of patience. If you don't already have it, you will have it.
Yeah. I'm sure it does. What about the communication side of things, as far as speaking and stuff is concerned?
Yeah, she is nonverbal. We all looked for her, babbling like a new baby, a 1-year-old, I suppose, would. So my son, again, back to him, he's making all sorts of noises and repeats syllables, and it's a joy. It's bittersweet, honestly. But it's a joy to hear him begin to form the syllables that will then become words, that become our speech and language. And so we watched to see if Remy would do the same thing. And she makes a few types of sounds, but nothing that would be on the cusp of learning a language.
Okay.
So the way she communicates to us is like probably a 3 to 6 month old baby would in her sound, right? If she's hungry or if she's tired or if she's needs a diaper change, right? She will cry.
Yeah.
And otherwise, she will make sounds of joy. I will say she laughs more than any other of my children, actually probably all of them put together. She's such a happy kid. And this surprises people, but I call her my easiest kid because even though she's medically complicated,
she laughs at all your jokes.
She laughs at anything and nothing and everything. And she loves to be, tossed in the air and, tossed on the bed. So she's very resilient, even though she's medically challenged. Like we treat her like the rest of them, we bounce around and she loves it.
Yeah. What about, so this is one thing that comes to my mind, especially with the communication barrier. I remember with our son Frankie, at one point we were told that maybe he has autism because he was making the babbling sounds and that we thought, and I feel like there was a little bit of the mama dada in there, and then it just stopped. It just went away. And then they're like, well, maybe this is the case. And so, I remember just being overwhelmed with this thought of, I'll never be able to communicate with my kid. Yeah. How have you been able to deal with that? Just knowing that, she's here, she's in your life, but you might never ever get the exchange of even just dad or something like that. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's certainly a blessing to have other children who can fulfill that to some degree. Because Remy was so severe, the line you draw of your mental expectations for her, it's probably not too hard to exceed those because she's pretty far down, whereas your Frankie was otherwise a normal child, and so it would feel like a much bigger loss. And for us, it would just be a win off of a baseline.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Frankly, we were just thrilled that she survived. We didn't expect her to live.
Right.
And a lot of these kids, they don't make it out of the neonatal unit, and they don't make it past the toddler years.
Yeah.
And if and when they do, their actual long-term prognosis is actually quite good. They can live a long life.
Okay.
So even now, we've been challenged by our primary care providers, like, you need to start thinking differently about Remy. Her airway has grown where, there's the risks of central apnea and low oxygen at night, these things that we really had to monitor. She's growing out of them. Just her physical strength is giving her the ability to fight more viruses.
Okay.
Right? So she's turning into an acute, let's survive and give her the best life possible for as long as she lives. We're slowly transitioning now to, we might get to have Remy for the rest of our lives. And that's cool. An incredible opportunity to look forward to. We're thrilled.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because the last time you were on, there were ongoing health issues where you're in the hospital, out of the hospital, but right back to the hospital, and not the easiest thing to navigate. So she's moved beyond that at this point.
There's always risks.
Okay.
Yeah. So if a sickness comes through the house and everyone gets it, my 8-year-old and 7-year-old kids, they will recover first. And then it takes dad a little bit longer to get over it. And it probably takes Remy just a little bit longer than dad.
Okay.
So that gives you an idea about her threshold.
Sure.
We've learned, though, over the years through many days in the hospital, here are the tools that we have available. So we have nebulizers and BiPAP machines and all sorts of proactive interventions that we can do as soon as we sense that something's wrong.
Okay.
It's not going to hurt to put her on those things, to give her respiratory support. And so it's been trial and error. It's been looking at what the community has said about their experiences. There's a great Facebook group for CDLS out there, and it's very active, and that benefits the whole community. And certainly there's
Sure.
a lot of tragedies woven in there, but the good is there too, in that, you know, everybody who wants to contribute, they want to help everyone else, and they played a role in helping Remy today. You know,
Yeah.
she is alive and doing well in part because of those groups and mom and dad's willingness to share what they're going through and what they've learned.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. One of the things that I often talk about on the podcast, which men in general seem to not be super great at, is community. Mm-hmm. We like to be the macho man. I can do it by myself. I don't need you. You know, just stand back and let me do my thing. Can you maybe speak a little bit more to the importance of having community? Even having multiple children, at least at some point, you feel like, I can navigate this okay. My wife and I, like, we're able to do this. Maybe the help of a grandparent, maybe one of their family from time to time. You know, I've since grown from that. Mm-hmm. But maybe that was the same case for you early on, and then Remy comes along and it's just like, all right, this is a challenge that no one prepared me for. So where does community come in to help with all that?
Yeah, you know, for those who are Americans who were born in the great land of the USA, and especially for Texans, and if you're male, right, you've got all these things of going against you when it comes to community. Perhaps certainly personality comes into play, and the more isolationists feel that we've had, especially since COVID. So you can actually probably do it on your own, and you probably would do okay. But I think you're missing something richer in life and something deeper, and something that can help carry you and not just be such a weight on your shoulders. Like, why carry the weight if people want to share that with you? And it's not a one-way transaction either. You're going to give to them your experiences and knowledge and wisdom. And a lot of times people just want to tell them what to do, you know. I think some of the things we've learned best are just people sharing their story, and you'll pick out the truths from that, or the things that are needed. Yeah. And that's a great way to cross those connective, those communications you want to do in such a way that people can receive it. So as far as, you know, communication with dads and maybe their children, this is Fathering Our Future after all. I'll do a quick story. When we had our first girl, my wife was like, it's time. We've been married several years. You know, let's have children. And I said, I don't want to, you know. I'm enjoying no children. And of course, we had our first child, and I thought, this is kind of hard. And the clock was ticking in a sense, so we went ahead and agreed. She mostly agreed, and I, you know, followed along. Let's have another child. Okay, let's do it. And I thought, man, 2 kids is really hard. Then we had pregnancy with the twins, right? The CDLS babies, and Remy, who came out of that. And, you know, looking back, I tell people now, having kids is easy. It's not hard. And so I went from a mentality of kids are hard to, once I had Remy, I realized, no, kids are not hard. They're not hard at all. She totally shifted my mindset in 1,000 ways. She's changed the way I think about raising kids and what it means to have children. And we were glutton for punishment, so we actually had a 4th child after Remy. And that in itself, I think, was a bit of overcoming some fear. There's always that question, what if this wasn't a freak accident of nature? Or, you know, what if another child comes out who's severely disabled? How in the world could you handle another one? And so we just had to give that to God and say, you know, this is an act of faith. And, you know, God knows what we can handle. And in this case, he gave us a beautiful boy who's perfectly healthy and doing great.
Yeah. I think that's a testimony, obviously, to trust in God because, and this is not a knock at people who do this, but typically the trend is when you have a child with special needs, you're usually done. A lot of the families that I can think of, maybe they had 2-3 kids total, but the second or the third child had Down syndrome or something else, and it was just like, okay, we're gonna stop right here because of the challenges that come along. So it's interesting that after Remy, you have this shift of this really isn't as bad as I always thought it was going to be. Even having 4 kids, I had this moment just the other night. Actually, I was sitting in a chair. My wife was across from me on the couch, and I think she was holding the baby, and the other 3 kids were like just huddled around her, on top of her, next to her. And I was looking at this, and I thought, man, this isn't all that bad. I didn't tell her this. I was like, I could totally see us having a couple more kids. But she's done. Yeah. She is done. Our babies are too large. So, but it is kind of beautiful how over time that shift can happen. You go through something challenging, but then you take that look back and in hindsight, and you have 20/20 vision. You realize, man, it's such a beautiful thing that the difficulty is not what stands out. But let me just ask, because in your story with baby number 1, you talk about how you've been married a certain amount of time, the clock's ticking. So how old is your oldest right now?
Yeah, she's 8 years old.
Okay, so now time was already ticking 8 years ago, and then you fast forward closer to today. Why was the decision made to have another kid? I mean, I know you know how it works.
Yep.
So it's not like, slip and fail. It's none of that.
No, we have kids so easily, right. So it was very intentional.
So why was the decision made to have another child after everything up to this point?
Yeah, it goes back to your community. Most of our best friends had large families, and both biological and adopted, and we saw this self-synergy with these larger families where they just had a unique culture within their family unit, and we desired that. Yeah. And we also felt like, it's ultimately up to the Lord as to whether or not life comes or not. And so I don't take a super hard stance on that, but it was a thought that we had, if the Lord would will it, we will bring another soul into this world who could impact people in a positive way and grow God's kingdom. And if not, that's okay too. There's perhaps more time for us to do that ourselves. Yeah. And so I think it goes back to community again. The people we saw who could do it gave us the strength and the confidence to say, well, maybe we could do it too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Were there any challenges raising a baby while also raising Remy simultaneously?
Yeah, I mean, we're there now, and I won't lie to you guys, it's hard. It's very hard. And we, in fact, lost one of our beautiful caregivers in a tragic accident, so we're feeling the pain right now of not having that support where it's just mom and dad and 4 kids and really 2 babies. So it's not easy, but I guess it depends on how you look at it, Are you taking joy in what you're doing with your kids? And does life give you the opportunity to have that time with them? And for us, we've been blessed to have both that time and that opportunity. And so we lean into it. I recognize not all moms and dads have that time. And so, they say it's not the length of time you have, but it's the time that you give when you do have that time. So pour it into them, weapons grade, deep and intense when you do have that time. And that'll last for a child. Yeah. Looking back on our own childhood, I didn't have a lot of those moments with my dad, but the moments I do have, boy, I remember. And those are seminal moments in my childhood and gave me this irrational confidence growing up that he instilled in me. And it didn't take a lot of time to do that. So if you don't have a stay-at-home dad or mom life, you can still get what you need. by really being intentional with the moments you do have with your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good word. That reminded me, at our last house before we did this last move, we were getting the sprinkler system repaired, and this old man, it was his business, and he showed up, and he's pushing 80, and I was touching up some of the doors in the house, so I had some doors out in the garage that I was painting, and he saw those, and he's like, man, he's like, when I was a kid, my dad, he did a lot of stuff like this. He was like, and I'll never forget him taking me with him just to go paint doors and letting me try my hand at it. And it's just like, man, like, this is 70 years ago, and you still remember the details that he was able to tell me about, what his dad said or how much he paid him, and, the little phrases that he took with him from that. And this is not, a stay-at-home dad. This is, I'm going to bring you to work with me today or a couple of times, and, something catches there that kids take with them throughout life.
They do.
And so, yeah, just to add to your point, the intentionality is something that we've got to be focused on. Hey, if you're a new dad or choosing to embark on a fresh start as a father, I have a gift for you. I wrote a book a while back called Cut the Crap, Direct Tips for Becoming a Dad. I don't teach you how to change a diaper. That one's totally on you. But I do talk about 5 elements that you need to focus on as a dad if you want to be the dad your children need you to be. And this is completely free. It is yours. There's no strings attached. The only thing that I'd like you to consider is if the book brings value to you as a father, make a contribution by going to fatheringourfuture.com/support. But you don't have to. Again, it is a free gift from me to you. The link is in the description after the end of the episode. Click it, get your copy, and I pray that it helps you. Everyone has an opinion on fatherhood, but there's only one place that we should actually look, and that's to God, our Father. That's why I wrote Following Our Father, a devotional for dads. In this, I cover 30 qualities and attributes of our Father in heaven that help us better understand our identity as dads. Each devotional is followed up with a daily step so that we can take the principles of our Father and immediately apply them to our own lives. This is a tool and a resource in your hands that will bless you. Click the link in the description and get yourself a copy of Following Our Father today. You brought this up, and I wanted to talk about it. You talked about the joy that's a part of all this. If people want to get more of the struggles and the challenges, they can go back and listen to the first episode we did, because that's what we primarily focused on. Because I think it's good, like to your point of community, here's our struggle, here's our story, and then you're able to take things from that. So, but oftentimes in these conversations, what we don't focus on is the good that comes with it. Mm-hmm. Because for whatever reason, we think, I have a child with special needs. It's going to be doom and gloom from this point on. Yeah. So I'd love to hear you talk about maybe some components, elements of joy that have come out of raising Remy.
Yeah. Okay. I could talk all day about that. And just not to step over the fact that we went through the 7 stages of grief when we realized that our normal twin, perfect family, the white picket fence and all, that dream was dying. And in its place was something very unfamiliar and scary, and we didn't know anybody like this. But through the years, for those who are of faith, when you pray prayers, I encourage you to pray big prayers, but don't be surprised if God answers them. And I tell people all the time, Remy is my answer to prayer. And, what do I mean by that? Well, I used to be very, very self-conscious. But when you're holding a child with 3 fingers and walking through the store, you're going to get over that. Yeah. You just are.
You better.
And I also realized that there is a lot of people out there who have a desire, a gift. I don't know what it is, but they'll be on their shopping cart and they'll see Remy and they'll swerve that cart straight towards me and engage me in conversation.
Wow.
And I'm not one of those people, never have been, didn't understand there were people like that. But there's a lot of people like that. They want to hear her story. They want to hear what's going on in my life, it's like this natural inspiration to them. And I didn't know there was a gravity about Remy until, we began to do life with her. Another one of the joys with Rem, again, like I mentioned, is now having kids is easy. We were talking last night, in the not too distant future, we want to look at the possibility again of adopting.
Okay.
And you're like, you crazy. And maybe we are. But it goes back to your mentality of, if you can do it with a special needs child, you can do it with any child. And there's a lot of kids out there who they won't have a mom and a dad.
True.
They won't have a caregiver, a foster parent, if somebody doesn't step up and say, all right, I'll take them. And what greater fulfillment in life than to take care of the little ones, the orphans, the widows. There's a deep calling there.
Right.
And I don't want to shirk that. And obviously the Lord's timing and all that, but we're raising our hand and saying, hey, we're crazy, but we're willing.
Yeah.
And we can operate in your strength, Lord. Finally, I think the one thing I'll say about the gift Remy also has given me is she broke down a lot of assumptions I had about the Lord, or things I didn't know about the richness of walking with God and how sweet it is to walk with Him. And just watching how she laughs all the time, and how she's so patient, and how even when she's losing her lunch, she's like smiling afterwards. I'm like, man, nobody's smiling when they're throwing up, but Remy does. She gives me a good perspective just looking at her, like, God's got this.
Yeah.
And, maybe a story for another day, but she died on the hospital bed about 2 years ago. Wow. And God brought her back to life before our very eyes. It was unbelievable. And I remember at the time we were praying, God, we're giving her to you. We're opening our hands. If you take her, we understand. We didn't want Him to take her. And if you want to raise her up, you can do that too. And, a bit specifically what I mean here is, her SATs went to 0 for at least a minute or two. She was just zeroed out. Her lungs were flooded. She was locked up. And then all of a sudden, everything released. She started breathing again, and they worked her back. And so that was its own journey of not only us learning what to do in the future, but at that point, it was really a moment of trust. And this is going to be pretty deep, but I think we all have to get to a point, or I encourage us to get to a point where you can let anybody in your life go and it be okay. And that's brutally hard to even think about, much less say out loud. Yeah. For my other kids who are normal kids, if you will, have everything in front of them. If for whatever reason God were to say it's time, it's their time, could I survive, right? Certainly I would go through the process of grief, and it would be devastating. It absolutely would. But, it's either we're living our lives for kingdom purposes and we trust Him, or we've got work to do to trust Him. And Remy helped me unlock some of that. God, it doesn't matter who you take. I trust you. I do, and I'm here no matter what. I'm in this. I'm committed. I'm leaning into it. And it's not a conversation I would have had with my own soul had Remy not brought that to bear. Yeah. And God forbid none of that happens. But there's a scripture that says, are you willing to leave father and mother, brother and sister, husband and wife for my kingdom? And perhaps that's not what the original intention is meant by, like death or whatever it may take, right? Abandonment or tragedy. But it is a way where God's saying, look, if you trust me with everything and live your life with that open hand, I'll take care of your kids. And we talk about the community with others, but having that community in a sense with the Lord, man, that takes a tremendous burden off of it.
For sure.
It does.
And that has to be, in my mind, it's got to be first and foremost. Like, that's where everything starts there. If you don't have that community with God, you really don't know how to facilitate and enjoy the community with other people. And which is why I think, when Jesus is asked, what's the greatest commandment? He goes ahead and he throws in the second one. It's like, you love God, but you also then love them as you love yourself. But that's the thing. There's a contingency on how I love myself and how I see myself based on what I gain from loving God. And then I'm able to then love them, not necessarily the way that I want to treat myself, but I then love them because of how I have been treated by God. And so, you've got to have the community with the Lord, but that doesn't, on the other side of the coin, negate the fact that you need other people.
Yeah.
The classic example that I always give is Adam in the garden. God's there, and God still says it's not good that man is alone. So clearly we need other people, but we also need God. But I think that's beautiful on the joy. I was going to ask what lessons you've learned, but it sounds like your lessons and your joy have almost kind of gone in tandem. I do want to bring this, though, up because, and you already alluded to this, and maybe there's a specific, and if there's not, that's okay. We can keep moving forward. But in the last time you were on the podcast, you brought up the fact that, you have a different demeanor about yourself when you walk in to a public place with Remy. Not to where you're kind of recluse and you don't want to talk to anybody, but you're expecting, in a sense, for someone to look, to stare, to ask a question, and you are more eager to just immediately break the barrier and have conversation. And if you will, Remy's become this catalyst for you to have deep, meaningful conversation and connection with other people. Is there any sort of testimony since, August of 2022 that has come from that where maybe there was just a particular exchange that stands out?
There are so many. And my wife is vlogging, I think it's called. Forgive my archaic understanding of this whole world here. And she tells Remy's story. Her handle is Give Remy a Hand on Instagram. I think from there you can find anything else if you want to follow Remy's story today. That's and cool. Going forward. I won't give any specific examples, but in aggregate, people always talk about what an inspiration we are. And, from my perspective, it's just, hey, we're just living life. We're just leaning into this. We're finding the joy in it. And there's a lot of joy to be found. And, the bitter comes with the sweet. And that's okay, right? So if we didn't do it, let's flip the tables. What if we were more reclusive and didn't have a community, in our case, a church community? That's fantastic. Would Remy's gift be shared, right? Or would we be hiding her away? And it's not something to be ashamed of with these kids. I recognize there are medical challenges that might keep some kids at home, or some are immunocompromised, and, it's up to each parent and their group to decide how to handle those things. But we've thought of Remy as a gift to be shared. Risks included, all of it. And so we try and be thoughtful during, we call it sixth season, right? Which is almost half the year. We're a little bit more careful, but if someone wants to hold Remy and love on her, we usually let them.
Yeah.
And both Remy and whoever's holding them, their faces light up. And again, I wasn't one of those people, so I'm sort of learning along the way. I'm watching people who just have this desire to want to connect with her. And that enriches our ability to build trust and relationship with them. And I think that's beautiful in that they're always like, you're such an inspiration, you're a hero. And we're like, no, we're just not crazy because we're not doing this ourselves. You can't do it yourself.
Right.
You can, but why? Why do it yourself? If there's anybody out there, special needs kids, they are a gift. And you would be shocked if you haven't unlocked this yet to know that is true. And there's people out there who want to engage with your children, who've dedicated their lives to engage with these children. And so I would encourage you to just to be sensitive to that and see perhaps there's opportunity there to expand your family. There's people that today that I would call family that I wouldn't have before, and they're there because of Remy. There's many therapists, right? There's many medical providers, deaf interpreters. I could go on. And I've met so many people, and really smart people too, which lifted my ability to even talk about stuff like this. But they enrich your life. And Remy's done that in a number of ways, and we just continue to champion her story. We continue to watch what God does in our life through her.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this. This can be, in relation to what we've talked about, but you're a father of 4. You've got some experience under your belt. In this season of life that you find yourself in, what is the best piece of advice that you would offer to dads?
Yeah, so whether you're a dad or you play that role as a father figure, and recognize there's a lot of that in today's world, grandfather or adopted child, there's potential in your children that I think would blow our minds. And so if you can find ways to speak life into their spirits, there's no greater influence than you. And again, we talked earlier, it doesn't take much time to do that, but if your eyes are burning with intensity and love and passion and belief in saying, like, you've got this, you can do it, speak that into them, and that'll do wonders for their health. It'll do wonders for their mental health. It'll do wonders for the life that they'll live in the days ahead. And so it doesn't take much time, but its impact is unparalleled. And so in my kids, we speak life, we speak faith, whether we see it or not. That's what faith is,
Yeah.
Maybe not see it yet, but it's there, and what they can become. And ultimately, we want all of our kids to do more and be more than us. I think, but we also want to say, well, we don't want them to necessarily have more. That's not what it's about. We want them to be better people.
Sure.
And for the faith-based people, we want them to make a bigger difference in the kingdom than we ever could.
That's right.
Build upon what we've done.
Right.
And when we look back at the end of our life and have that legacy, I think you'll look back and say that was a life well lived.
Yep.
And that will carry on.
Yep.
And I can't imagine a greater reward than that.
Yep. I think that's beautiful. And so I always talk about the mission of fatherhood. And I believe that is to equip and to disciple our kids to be a part of God's mission in a greater capacity than ourselves. And I always tag that on at the end, in a greater capacity than ourselves, because I see this pattern of succession, even biblically. Mm-hmm. John the Baptist does it. He says, someone's coming after me. Yeah. I can't even kneel down and unlatch the men's shoes. Yeah. And even Jesus, at the end of his ministry in life, what does he say? Greater things, greater works than these you'll do.
Yeah.
So there's always this passing of the baton, if you will, to where I've done this, but since you've been with me, you've learned things at a younger age that it took me a lot longer in life to figure out. Go and do more. Mm-hmm. Go and do greater. And I think that's a beautiful component of legacy that as dads we get to pass on. And speaking life is certainly how we can do that. So this has been a beautiful conversation. So much good has been shared, and I'm appreciative that you came onto the podcast to open up about it, because I know it's not always the most comfortable thing, to come up and say, so here's what I did last Thursday, and here's the details of my life. It's not always, especially for men, like you like to hold it close, but I'm grateful that you took time to do this with me today. I will ask, though, before we wrap things up, if you would close us out in a word of prayer.
All right. Lord, it's an honor today to be with my friend Anthony and our listeners and viewers today. And I think you've challenged us with how can we be more intentional about life, regardless of what you've put in our way or perhaps what you've put there to grow us. I think that the intention is that it is all for our growth and our good. And help us to have that mental framework. And if we can't do it on our own, Lord, let your Spirit do the work to let us have that mental ability to see that this is for our good. And when we see it that way, we can look ahead with hope and faith, and it'll grow our perseverance. Thank you for Remy and all the kids out there with this CDLS syndrome. But I thank you for the gift of Remy as well, and for the gift of any special needs kids out there, and the heroic mothers and fathers and caregivers who take care of them. Lord, I pray that this episode would be a blessing to them, and they would get to know you better even as I'm growing in that way. We give you glory today. Amen.
Amen. Thank you again for being with me. This was a lot of fun. And
Same.
It's always good. And for everyone listening, watching, thank you so much for being with us today. This is Father in Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I hope you'll join me next time. Hey, one more time, I want to thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever you listen, and consider leaving a nice review, because I would appreciate that. But if you're not connected to Fathering Our Future on social media, you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and there you're going to get some additional content on a more regular basis that you don't always get here on the podcast. Now, the last thing that I would like to ask of you is that you would consider becoming a financial partner of Fathering Our Future, because dads make a difference, and dads are not disposable. Dads are vital, and they are essential, and they are needed. And the impact that dads make doesn't just reside in the home, but it has a ripple effect that goes to churches and communities and culture. And I'm inviting you to be a part of equipping and empowering and educating dads to be the dad that God has called them to be and that their children need them to be. You can become a financial partner with Fathering Our Future. It can be a one-time contribution, a monthly commitment. But by doing that, you play a direct role in impacting dads. You can check the link in the description below. You can pray about it. You can get on board. And I thank you in advance for becoming a part of Fathering Our Future in a special and a dynamic way. God bless you.